Welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast, where I talk with the world's leading thinkers, planners, and doers who are helping to build great companies in their own way. We learn how the work they're doing is creating an impact and get to know a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. Also, you can check out our books, Made to Thrive, outlining how to be a great CEO, as well as Onboarded, which is about making your new hires more effective faster. Warren Rustand is a husband, father, grandfather, an entrepreneur, corporate leader, educator, speaker, and philanthropist. He received his undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Arizona, where he was an academic All-American basketball player. In 1973, he was selected as a White House Fellow through a nationally competitive process. He was appointed as a special assistant to the Secretary of Commerce, where he co-led the first ever executive-level trade mission to the Soviet Union. Then, he became special assistant to then Vice President Gerald Ford. In 1974, when the Vice President became President, he asked Warren to serve as the Appointments Secretary and Cabinet Secretary to the President. Following his time in public service, Warren again entered the private sector as an entrepreneur. He subsequently was CEO of 10 companies and chairman of many others. He has served on the board of directors for 50 for-profit, 50 for-profit and not-for-profit organisations. He was CEO of Providence Service Corp, a $2.1 billion company, Rural Metro, a $600 million company, and TLC Vision, a $400 million company. Warren was the global chair of the World Presidents Organization and is the current Dean of Learning for the EO Global Leadership Academy, in addition to all regional leadership academies. You can find Warren at warrenrustand.com. Warren, what I see in you is leadership personified. If I look beyond your remarkable list of achievements, which frankly I struggled to reduce, and I look between the lines of your book, I see a person who lives a successful life by serving others. And that's coupled with your vision, your intent, and your values. If this resonates with you, please tell us, how did you come to be in this place?
Well, thank you, Brad, first of all, for that overly generous introduction. You made me sound better than I am, in fact, so I appreciate that very much. And speaking of impact, I'd be amiss if I didn't compliment you on the impact you're having with your podcast, by the way. You're doing a great service for not just the business community, but the broader community, and so I appreciate that and respect that a great deal.
Thank you.
The deeper story is that I was born poor on a small, isolated farm in the state of Minnesota near the Canadian border, where we worked hard and we ate what we grew. We didn't go to town very often because we didn't have not much money to do anything with. So I had that upbringing. At 12, we moved to California. I saw a broader world at that point in time, then went to the University of Arizona. And as you've said, I've had some things happen, some great experiences since then, and it's been a lot of fun. The most important decision I ever made was the woman I married, Carson, my wife, and we will be celebrating in about 8 weeks. We're celebrating 60 years of marriage. We have 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl, 19 grandchildren, and in an un-American way, our entire 3-generation family lives together on the same farm. And we've been there for 48 years, and our children grew up there, and they wanted to make their homes there as well, so they've all built their individual homes. So we have a big family, and it's all around us all the time, and that's the most important thing I've ever done in my life.
What a wonderful introduction. It seems as though more than ever, what the world needs is leadership. In government, business, not-for-profits, complex problems are increasing. As a world, how can we grow enough leaders to meet these challenges?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, as leaders, our job is to grow leaders, right? I think that's our obligation, is to replace ourselves. And so I think it's very important that in our organizations we continuously have leadership development programs where we try to identify those who might be one day some leaders and give them a broader and a different experience and hope that they grow into that leadership. I think too in our societies today we confuse leadership with celebrity. We have lots of celebrities, lots of influencers, lots of people who aren't leading anything, but their name is out and about all the time. I think what we need to look for is genuine leaders who care about problem solving, who have a sense of perspective around values, who have a vision for their lives and the lives of those around us, and who then execute that and in fact take people and organizations further down the road than they would be had they not had that leader. And so I think we have a sincere obligation to do a better job as leaders, to help others find that leadership path and to teach them the things that we at least have learned in our lives that may help them be better in their lives.
Yeah. There is work to be done. I agree with what you're saying, and I feel the sense of pressure that that all of these problems put on anybody who works in the leadership space. So thank you. That's a very considered answer. It's hard to disagree with you when you say I've done it all. It's such a remarkable resume. When I heard you speak recently, you said, I've done it all, but then you followed it up with, scaling a company is the best thing you can do. Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, the fun and excitement in my life, aside from family, which is my primary obligation, is growing businesses. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. It's challenging. It's hard, oftentimes quite risky. But indeed, when we do that, we create a broader job base. We get to hire more people. We give people salaries and benefits, and they can get married and raise children and have homes. They can contribute to their communities. So I see entrepreneurship and I see leadership as really a way to grow communities and to help communities develop. And so I think it's a bigger task than just growing a single company. But I think scaling a company is really fun. What I meant by having it all, again, I look good on paper, right? We all look good on paper in a resume. But if you read between the lines, I've had failure. I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
I've done dumb things. I mean, all of that stuff, right, that we all go through when we wake up some morning and say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever done. Or when we hurt someone unintentionally, right? It's all those human frailties that all of us have that we try to work through and be decent people. And so can you do it all? Yeah, I think you can have a great family. I think you can run great businesses. I think you can be successful in serving your community. And I think you can take care of yourself along the way. So I believe you can have it all. But it takes decided discipline, a really strong and clear vision, and then a plan to do that. And when you do that, you have an opportunity to be successful. And I know that Evolution Partners is all about strategy. And I think when we talk about scaling companies, we better have really good strategy. And we better have thought it through very carefully and have a process that at least works for us, right, in our circumstance. All processes aren't the same when it comes to strategy and comes to certain industries. But the whole process of clear vision, certainty of intent, power of values has to be at play all the time as we begin to scale these companies. So is it fun? Yeah, it's really fun. I look back on my life, I've had a great time. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that, boy, I've made a lot of mistakes too, and I've had a lot of failures, and you just work through them and do the best you can.
I'm going to just pick up on what you said there. One of the things that I've learned over many years, I joined EO, the Entrepreneurs Organisation, in 2003, and we do an exercise that I'm sure you're familiar with called Lifelines. And that is each person within a small group of, let's say, 6 to 8, would present to one another the journey of their life. Life was great at the top and life was bad or terrible at the bottom with a kind of midpoint. And then you would track the main or significant events through your life. And everybody's life went from high to low to high to low, depending on what was happening. And it's just that pattern recognition over enough years, and that really got me to realise everybody's life is ups and downs, and it's about riding those ups and downs.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to know many great leaders because of my time in the White House and other things, just unique experiences that I was lucky enough to have. I've not known a great leader who had an easy path.
Yeah.
Every great leader I know has had the same struggle in different ways, but the same struggle that we all have. But isn't that really the purpose of our lives? And isn't that really
Absolutely.
what this human journey is all about?
Yeah.
That's how we grow. That's how we change. That's how we evolve. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the dumb things I've done because it made me better somewhere down the road, and it made me make a better decision somewhere down the road. So I think we should celebrate our failures sometimes because we learn more from them than we do from our successes.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. It certainly aligns with my broader philosophies. And on the topic of philosophies, in your book, you discuss your personal vision statement to, and I'll quote, to improve the human condition wherever I find it. How have you used that statement to guide your life or in your life, part A, and then part B, why is it important for leaders to craft one for themselves?
Well, first of all, because I think it gives you your North Star. I think it gives you directionally where you need to go with your energy and effort every day.
Yeah.
And then as circumstances present themselves, you can execute that particular statement, right? So by improving the human condition every day, wherever I find it, it's this notion of as I see things in front of me each day, I have a chance to interact and to improve that circumstance. Now, sometimes, Brad, it's as simple as putting your arm around somebody, say, hey, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Or nice going, congratulations. Or somebody who's really down, sitting with them and talking with them and helping them in the struggle. There are bigger things. You know, I arrived in Seattle one night, rainstorm, got my rental car, driving down the street, stopped at a red light. 10 feet from my car was a man with a sign, homeless man, and the sign said hungry. When that light turned green, easy for me to drive on.
Yeah.
But I rolled down my window and I said, how can I help? And he said, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 2 days. And I looked across the street half a mile away and there was a fast food restaurant. So I said, get in the car. And he got in the car. All of his wet clothes and everything else. We drove over to this particular fast food place and I ordered him a bunch of food and sat down and talked with him. And I found out about his life story. And at the end of that, I asked the young manager of the place, is there a homeless shelter near here where he can get some dry clothes, get a shower, a bed, stay a few days? And the young man said, yes, we work with a homeless shelter. I know everybody down there. Can I help you? He took the man down there. I asked him to text me or give me a call, tell me, is he okay? He did. And I went on about my business. And he stayed in touch with me, this young man, and stayed in touch with the man that he had helped. And so you say, where's that man today? Well, that man today is working for a company called Amazon. He's an engineer. He's reunited with his wife and children. He has a home. His kids are going to school. He's helping his community. So the question is, where would that man be tonight if I didn't roll down my window?
Yeah.
Where would he be?
Yeah.
So somebody was presented to me. I had an opportunity and a choice to act or not. I chose to act because of my personal statement, right? Improve the human condition wherever I find it. Yeah. And that maybe facilitated him having a better day and a better circumstance than he would have otherwise. And I think we just do those little things. I did about that much, right? I put him in a car and bought him some food. And that young man did everything else. But I think we have to react to circumstances as they are there, and then hopefully we do a little good in the world.
I mean, that's an incredibly touching story. And thank you for sharing. What I take from that is, if you are capable, it's almost as though you owe it to the world to do the right thing or to apply effort. And you don't necessarily need to react to that, but it's you owe it to the world to craft your vision, perhaps, is a better way, so that you can do the right thing.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. Let's just change gears. You're in the second year at the University of Arizona, and following your dad's encouragement, you write a list of the 100 things that you want to achieve in your life. My question is, How's that going? How are you progressing through that list? And why is an exercise like this important for leaders and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was 19 years old when I did it. It may have been a bit impulsive, but my dad was a goal setter, and so I decided to write down those things I wanted to do. And when I look back on that list, and I have that list near me now, but when I look at that list, some of them are just soft and squishy and sophomoric, like anybody would write at 19 years old,
Yeah.
and some of them are big and bold, and I'm grateful for all of them because that was my thinking at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And I felt like what it did for me was to make more crisp in my mind those things that I think I'm capable of doing. And so I had those 100 things, and I'd look at that list once a week, every week, and it would remind me what I said I was going to do, and so I'd go about doing it. And I've completed 98 of the 100. About 20 years ago, I was doing well on my list, so I made another list of 100, and I'm about halfway through that. But it gives me focus, and I think I'm better, not everybody, but I'm better with focus than not having that. So it's given me discipline, and it's given me goals to pursue. It's taken me places I never thought I would go, and so it's been a lot of fun. But there are a couple that I probably will not be able to achieve in my lifetime.
Of course, you can't just leave the audience hanging there thinking, what is the couple that you won't be able to achieve having achieved so much?
Well, the one is that I wanted to visit every country in the world recognized by the United Nations. And changes in countries and breaking up of territories and so forth happens on a regular basis, and there are new names and so forth. The former Soviet Union is an example of that, for example. But this notion is that there are changes. But I have visited 190 countries. I've got about 10 that I haven't visited, and I hope that I'll get there one day. But it's elusive, and I hope that I can finish that. The other was I wanted to be president of the United States, and I thought that was a worthy goal. And perhaps if I'd have run in 2016, I could have been elected because we've proven we'll elect almost anybody in this country. But I think that that's one that I'm not going to achieve. So and I'm fine with that. That's okay.
But you got pretty close. I understand that working in the White House is not being a politician. But in the book, you say that acting with intent when it comes to time management is a simple idea in theory, but difficult to put into practice. When you were working in the White House for President Gerald Ford, you established this time schedule to manage the president's time that is still used today.
Yes.
What can you tell us about this, and what can leaders and entrepreneurs learn from this time schedule?
Great question. What I learned in the White House is that every minute counts. When you're dealing with perhaps the most important person in the world, who has the greatest responsibilities, each minute of his time is important. So I was managing his schedule. And as a result of that, I became very aware of how precious time is. We can't buy it, we can't sell it, we can't put it in the bank, we can't give it to someone else. It's a finite commodity. We have 168 hours a week. Taking away those hours that we sleep, we have about 110 hours a week that we can really work with. And it's what we do during those 110 hours that makes the difference. All of us have the same amount of time. Why are some people so much more successful, efficient, effective than others?
Yeah.
And almost always is the utilization of time. And so as I was in the White House, what I found myself doing was we were reacting to all these invitations the president would get. And he could not possibly execute all of the invitations that he was getting. And so I went to him on one occasion. I said, we're always reacting. What if we turned that around? What if we became proactive? What if you, Mr. President, determined the issues that you want to deal with? And then why don't we schedule everything around those issues so that you'll always be working on your highest priorities? And so he got his advisors around, and we all sat around and talked, and we realized there were about 6 or 8 issues that were really vitally important to the country, and that we were going to be proactive about that. So we began scheduling around those 6 to 8 big issues. And as you look back on his presidency, he had a very successful presidency because he was highly focused and time efficient. And he scheduled on a priority basis. So I created a schedule that basically has 4 buckets: family, business, community, and self. And in each of those, there's room for 3 priorities, 1, 2, and 3. And under those priorities, there's room to put the milestones that you have to achieve by what date in order to accomplish that priority. And so therefore you have 3 in each bucket. There are 4 buckets. You've got 12 priorities. You might have 40 or 50 milestones under all of those 12 that you have to achieve. You then take those 12 and you list them in order of the date by which they have to be done on a single page. And then you choose your daily schedule from that, right? So you're always working on priorities. Now, they're not all business, they're not all family, they're not all community, right? They're all different, they're mixed around because of the date by which they are due. And so, but you're always you base your exercise of time then based on priorities.
Yeah.
So you're always knocking off your highest priorities, and it makes for much higher achievement in a shorter period of time. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch that over the years and to watch presidents use that, and certainly it was good for President Ford to use. He became very effective with it. So I use it, others use it. It works out pretty well.
Wonderful. I understand that that's still the EO check-in form for Forum around those 4 buckets. So it's
Yes.
Obviously reached far and wide, despite in relation to your time with EO as well.
Yeah.
You state the 3 principles of leadership as clarity of vision, certainty of intent, and power of values. I've read the book a few times, your book, and I find that anyone can make things more complex, but only the people who really understand something can make it more simple. And this is more simple. And it's as though the way it's presented, you can look at it from any angle and it still stands up to scrutiny.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the importance of these 3 principles of leadership, please?
Yeah, in my 20s, I became aware of the fact that seeking clarity on everything that I did was really important. And the more clear that I could get it in my mind, the easier it was to achieve.
Yeah.
Because it defined my intent, right? And so clarity of vision in all things, not just one grand big goal in life, right? It's this notion of everything that I do in my family. I should have clarity around my role as a father, as a husband.
Yeah.
In my business, I need to have clarity around my role as CEO and where we're going with the organization, right? In the community, what am I trying to achieve I've been on many not-for-profit boards and chaired many others, and what are we trying to achieve? What's the clarity that we're operating with in the not-for-profit world, right? Who are we trying to serve? How are we trying to serve them? And then finally for myself, do I have clarity of vision about everything from my conditioning every day and my weight and my discipline around eating, and am I doing the right things there? So I think that clarity helps everything we're doing. And going back to time, we utilize time more effectively when we have clear vision about where we're going.
Yeah.
The second piece of that is certainty of intent. That means what's our plan to achieve it? We have to act with intentionality on the vision that we've created, right? So we have to create a plan to get there. And so that's the operational side of the life, right? Okay, I'm going to New York. I don't have GPS and I don't have any maps. How am I going to get there, right? It's that clarity of vision. And then finally, the power of values. I think all of us have to be bound by certain values that we really think are important in our lives. We define them for our family. They're in the book. We define them for each of our businesses. We expect in our corporate cultures that people will abide by those values. We think they're really important, and they serve as the North Star, the guiding light, the guidelines, right? Or the guideposts even as we're going down the road, right? They keep us on the road. And we'll swerve a little bit left and we'll swerve a little bit right from time to time, but generally our values keep us contained in a certain playing field. And I think that's very important. So that's how we use them, and that's how they're intended in the book.
Thank you. I love the way that you're also you very easily draw to other thinkers' work. Very easily you segue from thinking like that towards perhaps a Stephen Covey and the work that he's done around the 7 habits of highly effective people and many of the other things. And I suppose it's a sign of intellect and humility, but it more than that, it's a bit like a jigsaw where it's like, well, this is how I see the world and it fits in with these other people. So There isn't a question in there, but it does lead into this next question, which is you can say that IQ, or you say that IQ used to be the most important personal attribute, but today EQ, or emotional quotient, is. Why is this so? Why has EQ now risen to the top of the deck, let's say, as being the most important thing? And what can leaders do to improve their EQ?
Yeah, it's a great question. I still think IQ is very important. Native intelligence, raw intelligence, certainly important. It's part of the game, right? But I believe emotional intelligence post-COVID is really the most important attribute. And that's the notion of who we are, what we believe, how we make decisions, how we act in the world, how people react to us, how we read audiences or friendships or close associates around us. How are we reacting to the way they react to us and we react to them? All of those things become much more important, I believe, in today's world because of the context and the environment within which we're actually operating and functioning. And I think there were a lot of trends that were sort of accelerating into COVID, but COVID changed the game. Just think about virtual learning, for example, right? And education. I mean, it just changed the game, right? Think about medicine, think about housing, thinking about whether we work in a corporate setting or not anymore. All those kinds of interesting things. To supply chain management. All have changed. And now when we add artificial intelligence to that, it's another accelerant. And so I believe emotional intelligence is really important to be able to understand all of the context within which we see the world functioning at the present time and how we're going to react to it and how we're going to operate within it. Plus, I just think the leaders that I've been around over the years typify strong emotional intelligence. They know who they are, they know what they believe, they know how they're going to act. And that consistency makes you a great leader. In fact, I would argue that what hurts leaders is when they move radically or shift from one day they're the ogre and the next day they're the tyrant and the next day they're the benevolent father. They're all those things. And I think that consistency, day-to-day certainty, is what helps us lead.
How can leaders improve their EQ? If we've got a leader who's listening to this or an entrepreneur, is there any approach, go-to, book, direction, practice, anything you can think of?
Yeah, first of all, I think there are several good books out about it. I think one of the things you want to do is find quiet time and go deep within yourself. I think one of the things that we don't do enough of because of social media today and the busyness of our world is we don't call time out and just sit and be quiet.
Yeah.
And just think. I teach people that at 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I close my door, shut off my computer, and turn off my cell phone. And I spend 2 hours a day thinking. Now, I choose the topic, right? I might be thinking about making acquisitions. I might be thinking about being a better father. I might be thinking about a number of things. But it's this notion of being still, listening with intention, and focusing on your inner self. And defining for yourself, what is it I really believe? What is it I really want to do with my life? How am I going to create greater value for the world? And if we do that repeatedly, we become better people. And I think that's the notion of improving EQ, right? It's this in emotional sophistication that we can have, that if we'll just listen to ourselves. I have great belief in us individually as doing the right thing and being the right person. Yeah. But we need to spend a lot of time thinking about it. If we are so busy that we're just moving from one thing to the other without any pauses or any breaks, I think we're hurting ourselves. In fact, a quick story, if I may, Brad. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett became friends, and Bill Gates began talking about scheduling and so forth. And Bill Gates' belief, and there's a video online that you can see about this. Bill Gates thought that to be a good CEO, as he built Microsoft, you had to be busy every single minute of every single day. You had to be seeing people and doing things and going fast and all that sort of stuff. And so one day he asked Warren Buffett, after they became friends, could I see your calendar for the month of April? Yeah. And Warren Buffett still uses a paper calendar, so he pulls it out of his pocket and he hands it to the technology guy, right? He was stunned that he had a paper. But anyway, and Gates looked at it and he said, you only have 4 appointments in the entire month of April. Yeah. And Buffett said, yeah, well, maybe by the time I get to April, I'll have 5, but we'll see. It'll see how it goes. And Gates said, well, what do you do with your time? He said, I think. Yeah. I think and I read and I think and I read. And that's what's made us successful, right? That's what's made us successful. He said, being busy is not a surrogate for leadership,
Yeah.
right? It's just not. Being busy has nothing to do with whether you're a leader or successful or not, right? It's what you do and how you think that makes you successful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. You are an advocate for a book called Leadership by James McGregor Burns, where he discusses transformational leadership. Why this book, and what's the difference between transactional leadership and transformational leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brad. Well, first of all, James McGregor Burns and the book Leadership is considered by most the seminal work on leadership. It's not an easy read, but it's a great read. And by reading it, we can know as much about leadership probably as doing any other thing. That's number one. Secondly, he does talk about the difference between transactional and transformational leadership. So transactional leadership is the notion that as leaders we do 100 tasks a day, we probably do them better than most, and as a result people look at us and think we're leaders, right? And because we've done them well. Transformational leadership is to take that which lies unconscious in a human being and raise it to a conscious state. So as we think about great transformational leaders, historically we would think of people like Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Winston Churchill. I mean, those are the kinds of people that had transforming experiences for people and nations, right? Because of their leadership. And so, because they activated something that was in other people, and they brought it to this conscious state, and when it becomes conscious state, you act on it. Take Gandhi, for example. Gandhi was upset over salt prices raised by the British that affected the poor. He was a young lawyer. So he put on his robes, got his staff, got his sandals, decided he was going to march in protest. And when he started marching, there wasn't anybody with him. But 247 miles later, when he concluded his march, there were over 1 million people in the streets with him.
Yeah.
It began the transformation of the British giving up India for its independence and withdrawing. So it's this notion that one person makes a difference.
Yeah.
One person can be substantial in how things happen. Martin Luther King, nonviolent protest against civil rights laws, right? Nelson Mandela, fighting against apartheid, being a prisoner for 27 years and coming out of prison and being elected president of the country. Amazing story, right? So there are people like this all over who inspire, motivate, and bring to life feelings that people have that allows them to act them out in a positive and constructive way.
Wonderful. Clayton Christensen is a famous strategy author and thinker, I think out of California. And he wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. In that, he came down to the conclusion using the effectiveness of the book is that he uses a business thinking framework to consider personal matters so that business people will understand the matter will be on their level. He came to the conclusion that serving others is the way to measure your life. And you say, I believe that serving others is one of the ways that we define a successful life. It's interesting that people who have lived a full life, and full in the sense of achieved a lot and are still continuing to achieve, are coming to this conclusion. Can you tell us about the importance of serving others?
Yeah, Clayton Christensen was really an outstanding man. Taught at Harvard for years. Was the most popular teacher on the Harvard campus for years. And he and I both had a chance to teach at MIT in the Entrepreneurial Masters program. Yeah. And so we spent some time together. And I found him just to be a marvelous thinker and man. Great human being. But I think many of us have come to the conclusion that in the end, we strip away all of the material wealth and all the worldly things that everybody seems to prize. In the end, it's about how we treat mankind. It's how we treat fellow travelers. It's how we serve others that really makes a difference. And my wife and I had a chance to go work in the Center for Dying Patients, Mother Teresa's Center for Dying Patients in Calcutta. And as you hold people and you feed them and they're in their last minutes, hours, days of life, nobody's talking about airplanes and cars and houses and stuff. I mean, they all talk about relationships. They talk about love. They talk about, passion. And as they die in your arms, you come to a very sobering conclusion, and that is that worldly possessions don't really matter much at all, right? They just don't matter. As long as we have enough food on the table and we have a place to put our head down at night, it's probably a pretty good situation. Better than most people in the world, by the way. And so I think this notion, the higher calling, is something I talk about a lot, the greater purpose in life. Each of us has to define that for ourselves. And I'm not saying mine is better or worse than anybody else's. It's just mine, right? And that's the notion, I believe, that we are called to a higher purpose, and that is to serve mankind. Each of us has to figure out how to do that. Each of us has to rein in our own egos in a way that allows us to subordinate our interest to the interests of others. And when we can understand how to subordinate our interests to the betterment of others and to the interests of others, we then become a servant leader. Robert Greenlee wrote a book in 1903 defining, it's called Servant, but it was defining for the first time servant leadership.
Yeah.
And I just think it's one of the really good books, and I think it gives us a really deep sense of serving other people. And I think that's why we're here. And I think we all know that. I think we all know that deep in our hearts.
Yes.
But sometimes it's tough to overcome the world. Right?
It is.
It's tough to overcome the world.
And it just makes me think about Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization at the top, realizing I'm here to help other people. So, excuse me, what do you think that a better business looks like for you and most people that you deal with? Now, this is a different question as I change gears. The purpose of this is I'm writing a book at the moment, my 4th book, about building a better business rather than a bigger business, a better business that serves you, that creates the life that you want. We don't need to go into that necessarily, but what do you think, if you think about the difference between, or just think about what does a better business look like in your mind?
A better business for me is one that serves the higher purpose. That it uses its resources and its people in a way that effectively gets them all engaged in a greater cause other than just making money. I believe that we can all make money. I think if we have average intelligence and we apply ourselves, I think we'll do just fine. Some will do better, some will do worse, but we'll all do just fine. The real purpose of businesses, I believe, is to serve the people that support that business, both employees and the communities. If we take profits out of a community, I believe we have to return something to that community as an organization. And that's the higher purpose. We can choose whatever that is. We have a business in Houston, Texas right now, and we've decided we're going to feed 1 million people. We're going to try to end poverty for 1 million people in and around the Houston area who don't have food every day. And so we've engaged all of our people in that cause. And while our people can't tell you how much money they make for the company at the end of every day, but they can tell you how many meals they've created at the end of every day. Yeah. So we're trying to engage them in the cause, right? And they find greater purpose. That translates then to their personal life where they get greater purpose, to their community where they get greater purpose. So the better company to me, Brad, is the company that has a bigger purpose than just revenue and profitability.
Lovely.
And it extends not only from the philosophy of the company, but to the individuals who work in that company, that's a part of the corporate culture. So I've been of a mind for a long time that a CEO has to worry about 3 things. First, culture. Second, people. Third, numbers. Lots of people have that reversed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of people have that reversed. So I think it's culture first. That's the environment within which we operate and function. That's the context we talked about earlier. People are those who give their lives to that organization during their work period.
Yeah.
And how we treat them, how they treat us, it's the road we're going together in that organization. And then finally, if we do culture and people really well, the numbers take care of themselves.
They do indeed. They do.
But if we lead with numbers, if we lead with wealth creation, I think we blunt the capacity in the innovation and ingenuity of those who work for us because they see the greed factor in what we're doing.
I remember, it makes me think of Pat Lencioni. I saw speak in Melbourne, and he said, if you get the right people in the right culture, or the right team, they will beat any other team in any circumstance.
Yes.
And it really speaks to what you're saying there.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah.
Is there a book that you would recommend for our audience?
Boy, there's so many good books out there. We talked about one, James McGregor Burns' Leadership, but the one that I like best because it speaks to values is a book called True North by Bill George. He took over a company when it was $10 billion in revenue. He built it to $60 billion in revenue, then became a full professor at Harvard, where he still resides today. He's written a follow-up book to that. I just think it's a great book about values and culture, and I think that's an important thing for all of us to consider.
Well, thank you for sharing. Now, you're an author. The book is The Leader Within Us, and you also do mentoring, and you actually mentor a couple of friends of mine, people that I know, and that's how we connected. How can people learn more about you and your business?
Well, there's I mentor because I love to mentor. I love to help people be successful, and that brings me happiness and joy, so that's good. And you have two really good friends, by the way, that are doing really well, and I really enjoy my time with them. You can go on to warrenrustand.com, and you can find different things about me and access to the book or whatever, but different things I'm doing. So that'll be fine. But I don't market, I don't advertise, I don't do anything like that. It's just if people want to find me, they'll find me, and we have good discussions.
Lovely, thank you. Now, what haven't we discussed that you wanted to cover off today?
Well, I'll tell you one cute story, and that is I was speaking to an audience one time, and the question was, if you had one thing to do over again, what would you do? And I thought for a moment, and I said, I'd marry my wife sooner. The notion that it was the most important decision of my life. It was the best decision I've made. And I wish I could have started that sooner. It's so good that it's affected my life so much. And she's such a strong matriarch, and she's such a great part of our family and the marriage. It's just, it's been wonderful. So, there are lots of things we could talk about, but that would be one thing I would share.
Well, that's lovely, and what a wonderful place to close. Warren, I feel so blessed to have had this conversation with you, and on behalf of our audience, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today and insights. It's just been a delight.
Brad, thank you so much. Thanks again for the great work you're doing. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, and if you ever fall short and need a guest, just give me a ring. We'll take care of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.